In our series, Discounted Justice, investigative reporter Mike PERLSTEIN has revealed the very low rate of violent felony charges in New Orleans that end in a felony conviction under first-term DA Jason Williams.
Well, the public never hears about most of these cases, and one of the most brutal drive-by shootings in recent New Orleans history. Mike tracked the case closely as it came perilously close to what would have amounted to a slap on the wrist.
The original plea offer not only left survivors and family members furious, it sparked dramatic action at the highest levels, as Mike explains in part 2 of Discounted Justice.
Some New Orleans shootings and killings have been burned into the city's collective memory. 2018, Jazz Daiquiris.
This was the scene of the city's 5th mass shooting in the past 6 years.
2013, Mother's Day Second Line.
The NOPD says 2 men, 7 women, and 2 10-year-olds were hurt when shots rang out at the corner of North Villeray and Frenchman Street.
2015, Bunny Friend Playground.
Gunfire between members of rival drug gangs sent 17 people to the hospital.
Black children being murdered and women of all ages and races being attacked.
Lost in all the carnage, some equally brutal shootings leave a much smaller circle of victims and their loved ones left to live with the anger, heartache, and profoundly life-altering injuries. The 2014 drive-by shooting on Burgundy Street in the lower 9th Ward could qualify as one of those. It was the early evening of August 10, 2014, when several men in a car drove by this house and opened fire with an assault rifle. The impact was devastating. The intended target, 33-year-old Terrence McBride, died at the scene after being riddled with 10 bullets. Among the large group of innocent bystanders, 16-year-old Jasmine Anderson was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. She was supposed to start 8th grade the next day. 5 others were shot and severely injured. A 4-year-old boy, now 12, was left blind. A 2-year-old, now 10, has permanent brain damage. The boy's mother continues to suffer grave complications from gunshot wounds to her stomach. And now, almost 8 years later, those survivors and their families are reminded of their nightmare on a regular basis. That's because the case against the 2 accused gunmen, Blair Taylor and Joseph Nelson, has been reopened and their life sentences thrown out. Their guilty verdicts were by an 11-to-1 vote of a jury, and a change in state law in 2018 requires verdicts to be unanimous.
You just outlined a family that essentially has been destroyed and is demanding justice.
The case against Taylor and Nelson was sent back to square one. And now, a new district attorney is in office, Jason Williams, formerly a career criminal defense attorney who was elected on a progressive justice platform.
Criminal justice reform does not mean letting people out of jail. It means holding them accountable and putting them in jail.
That was Williams in March after his office secured a guilty verdict in a murder case. But during Williams' first year in office, even some of the most serious violent felony cases were dismissed or subject to generous plea bargains. Of the 1,350 violent felony cases closed in 2021, 74% were either dismissed or reduced to a misdemeanor plea. Only 6% ended with a plea of guilty as charged. Another 19% ended with a plea deal to lesser felony charges. The Burgundy Street massacre was quietly headed down that same path of reduced charges and steeply reduced penalties, according to court records, recent hearings, and multiple sources. The plea bargaining started when one assistant district attorney suggested manslaughter pleas for both Taylor and Nelson, along with 15-year sentences. Nadra Enzi, a criminal justice activist who goes by the name Captain Black, offered this reaction.
Because, you've destroyed a family. You've murdered people, you've maimed people, many of whom were children. And 15 years, somebody might be able to get that much time for check fraud.
Captain Michael Glasser, president of the Police Association of New Orleans, had not heard about the developments in the case.
When did murder basically become misdemeanor? I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me.
So 15 years is basically, I think, an insult to the victims. When you give deals that are inappropriate to cases like this, it makes the public question all of the deals that you give out.
While the district attorney's office can't discuss a pending case, we learned that a plea deal was contemplated because some holes had developed. One of the original witnesses can't be located. Another co-conspirator who testified against Taylor and Nelson, and now serving a 20-year sentence for manslaughter, has clammed up. But the offer of 15 years did not last long. Judge Karen Herman, who is presiding over the case, refused to sign off. Then a more senior assistant DA took over the case. Plea offers were up to 30 years for each defendant. Then the family of the two disabled boys was given a voice, a loud voice. Among those who was brought in to listen, Jason Williams.
Then the ridiculously low plea deal that would have been put on the table. So kudos to the media, as well as the family.
On April 21st, and affirmed in court 2 weeks ago, Nelson pleaded guilty to manslaughter and accepted the 30 years. And with the DA now personally involved, the plea offer to Taylor was increased to 40 years. Sources said Williams was, quote, instrumental in raising the stakes. Taylor, who police say was the gunman who wielded the AK-47, turned down the offer. He is now set for trial in September, and the case against him may be stronger than it was at the original trial. Nelson's plea deal requires him to testify against his co-defendant.
You may have to make a deal with the sinner to get to the devil, and the devil would be the more serious offender.
Williams continues to decline my request for an interview, but Goyeneche, who has been critical of the DA, says he sees the office getting more aggressive with violent felony cases. Breaking his campaign promise never to charge juveniles as adults, which Williams has now done in several murder cases, is one example. His involvement in the Burgundy Street case is another.
I've seen the district attorney's office make decisions today that they weren't making 2 months ago.
Mike PERLSTEIN, Eyewitness News.